Hello and welcome to the India Hangout. It's the last phase of electioneering and campaigning and sloganeering and all of that you're seeing now. But the big question is, are expectations now running ahead of reality, particularly for the Narendra Modi and the BJP side of the political equation? The reason we're asking this question is clearly the expectations seem to be ahead of, in some ways, what the real economy can deliver, considering what the data has been saying for the last few years. The question is not whether things should not change. Of course, they should change for the better. The question is, how much can a new government, whether it's Modi or otherwise, realistically deliver when we're looking at or staring at a situation not only which is economically precipitous, but could also be politically precipitous. Joining me now, Dr. Surjit Bhalla, Chairman of Oxus Investments from Delhi, also Udayan Bose, investment banker based out of Mumbai, and also my co-host Ayaz, Memon, and also known as @Cricket Bhalla. Gentlemen, thank you very much for all joining us. So, Dr. Bhalla, let me begin with you. I think I mean, in your articles and your statements, you've been clearly, in some ways, rooting for a BJP government to take over for various reasons. The question is that while many of us may desire that, or some of us may desire that, is the expectation that comes with it now beginning to go beyond the reality, or what reality can actually deliver?
Yeah, look, the best way, I think, to analyze or to answer your question, assume for a moment that there was no election going on. Okay? So now, if there were no elections going on, we would all be looking at it from a business cycle point of view and observing the following: that inflation, which has been the highest ever in Indian history at 10% plus, is gradually, if not at sometimes sharply, declining. So and we can come to the El Nino in a minute.
Right.
So therefore, clearly the expectation is, certainly my expectation, that inflation, what we saw in the last 6 years, almost by definition, was an extremely unusual phenomenon. So purely from a business cycle, if you will, inflation sense, we should get back to below 7% inflation. So that's, if you will, a huge positive for the economy. If you now look at industrial production, your industrial production has been practically zero for 3 years running.
Right.
Now, is that normal? I mean, how abnormal can you get? So therefore, purely from a business cycle point of view, you'd expect interest rates to come down, industrial production to go up. Last but not least, several projects have been held up in the name of equity, or God knows whatever, inclusive growth, or whatever garbage we've been thrown at. And therefore, that itself, even with the present government, and notice so far I've not even mentioned the BJP or the Modi even once.
Sure.
So even the present government is, if you will, changing some of the rules. You had the coal allocation in Goa, the Supreme Court order, and so on and so forth. So bottom line, purely from a business cycle perspective, no elections, you would get the Indian economy at something like 6.5% for 2014-15.
Right. So 6.5. I don't know if you've seen the CRISIL report that came out recently. We talked about the opportunities lost and the opportunities ahead. It said that even 6.5% growth is something that will be a challenge, and that only will happen if a lot of the things that, let's say, manifestos like the BJP are promising are actually done. So, while you seem to feel that 6.5% is something that will come out of a cyclical rebound, the sense I'm getting from reading a CRISIL report, for instance, is that it will take much more than a cyclical rebound to achieve, for following reasons. One is the global economy isn't still looking up, at least for the Indian economy to benefit from it. The second is the quality of bank balance sheets and the bad loans. The third is private consumption growth, and obviously not the lack of private consumption growth, or sufficient private consumption growth. And the fourth is capital stock accumulation.
You asking me to?
Yeah.
Okay, let's look at each one of them. Let me add El Nino first.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure that will come up sooner or later. So, the last 5 years, we had record agricultural output, record agricultural growth. What happened to food prices? They went up.
Right.
Okay? No El Nino, surplus food, plenty of rainfall, agriculture prices went up. Therefore, now we've got plenty of stocks after all. That's what we've been accumulating for. So El Nino does have a deleterious effect on agricultural output. It still doesn't mean that agriculture prices will go up. So that's point number one. Okay? So I think this El Nino stuff is vastly exaggerated.
Okay.
Because purely from, again, as I said, I'm looking at the historical sense that you don't have, you go back as many years as possible. Basically, the number one effect on agricultural prices is procurement prices. So enough there on that. Now we come to various things. Let's look at global economy. Well, the West seems to be doing extraordinarily well, much better. So therefore, any indication that global economy is slowing down, I do not know where Crystal or anybody else gets a calculation.
No. They're not saying it's slowing down. They're saying that there was almost a 5% growth in the period from 2004 to 2008, which obviously created the kicker that we benefited from.
Look, in all of this, right, we cannot look at the 2004 to 2008 to look at the effects in 2014 and 15. You've got to look at what's happened in the last 3 years of global growth.
Right.
The whole story, as I keep emphasizing, and please see my article on Saturday, you know, there's a lot of confusion on levels and differences. The level is irrelevant. Okay? It's the change, it's the delta. Is it accelerating or is it decelerating? So
right.
Is global growth accelerating? I would say yes.
Right.
So therefore, there goes an argument of the global growth. Okay? Global growth, if anything, is positive for Indian growth.
Sure.
Then you have bank balance sheets. Well, the bank balance sheets are really a function. It's an endogenous variable. You can't use that as an exogenous variable. If growth comes up, bank balance sheets improve. If interest rates go down, bank balance sheets improve. So therefore, bank balance sheets should be completely thrown out of the discussion. Then you have private consumption growth. So that itself is a function of the growth. So, you know, you can't add that. Oh my God, private consumption growth is also low. So that's focus. And then last one is capital stock accumulation. Look, our investment rate has stayed somewhere around 34 to 36% for the last God knows how many years. We are not getting output from it. This is the highest investment rate we've had, and there hasn't been much of a fall in investment rate. Maybe we came down from 39 to 32% to 33%. So therefore, capital stock growth is also very robust, really robust. So therefore, to argue that, listen, because the ICO has been 5 for the last 5 years, the ICO will continue to be 5, that is missing the forest for the trees.
Got it. Okay, so let me bounce this to Mr. Bose for a moment, right? So you're saying that basically 6.5% growth is something that will come naturally. That natural growth, and we'll come back to the BJP part in a little bit, that natural growth should be sufficient to obviously respond to some of the concerns that we have as an economy, and obviously whoever comes in will carry the positive part of this. Mr. Bose, how are you seeing this? Are you as optimistic about the general and the underlying state of the economy?
Well, Surjit certainly knows what he's talking about, but you know, the problems in front of a new government is that I think the current finance minister, the outgoing finance minister, has literally cleaned up the treasury, and he has taken into account next year's accrued income into this year, and this year's expenditure postponed to next year. So you have a major art of balancing that will come up. You have to create the confidence for investment to take place, both domestic and inward foreign investment. All this takes time. If your question is, will 6.5 happen? Answer is yes. If your question is, will it happen very, very soon? The answer is no, because it takes time. Your first question, Govind, that you started was whether the expectations are going a bit ahead. My answer to that is, and I haven't been much out of Bombay, Surjit has. the expectation on Modi is so high. The people feel that the moment he comes, prices will go down, employment will go up, industry will go up. You know, it's like he's magic. Truth is, there is no magic, Govind. It's pure hard work. You have to contend with the enormous waste of NRE, and food security. Modi cannot say no to that because that's counterproductive. Meaning it's going to be, harakiri in the first year. So you'll have to adopt that. But you know and I know that money is going down the drain. And that is causing enormous problem to the system. So it's going to be a huge task you've destroyed the basic constitution of the economy. Chidambaram has, Pranab Mukherjee has, and now you have to mend it. And now look at coal. I mean, I was talking to some of my industry clients. Power projects stuck, no coal, 2 years gone. As a result, overruns. Now they're asking me to finance the overruns. So I said, have you got coal? He said, well, linkage coal hai. Have you got it? No, but we'll get it. So you are doing, by the time that power comes into production, you're going to produce that power at 8 rupees a unit. Right. Who's going to buy it? These are the basic fundamental problems which this government didn't even understand.
Right. Okay. Ayaz, you want to throw in something?
Yeah, I want to just come in. I mean, I'm not one for figures and numbers crunching and whatever else. But a question, I think Udayan expressed this a little bit, that the expectations have gone sky high. And this is a question maybe to Surjit or to Udayan, that, it's gone beyond hard sell. It's gone, I think, into oversell. So, and it's like Modi means everything for everybody, and everybody's lot will improve. So from the guy who's your lift man to the industrialist to a scribe like me, the minute he comes in, our lot will improve, whether it will improve in tangible benefits like money, pay hikes, or improved living standards or whatever else. In fact, where the media is concerned, you might find a lot of news channels blood on the floor because some of them may shut shop. There's just so many of them. So is that going to be a chain around his neck because or his legs? Because unless I feel you get a government or NDA comes with about 270, 275 seats on their own, if they have to live or cohabit with 3 or 4 partners who may actually have vastly differing, not even slightly differing socio-economic policies or philosophies, then what happens?
Okay, Dr. Bhalla, do you want to start with that?
Okay, look, now let's come to the expectations part, and within that I'll answer. There is no question whether you are in rural Bihar, rural UP, urban Mumbai, urban Delhi, the expectations of what will happen are sky high. So let's get that firmly on the table. And if you will, almost by definition, unrealistic. Now, the good news is that if Modi, and let's assume if we're talking about the possibility of a Modi government, if Modi is able to fulfill even half of those expectations, he would still be very, very successful and very, very popular. So that's how sky high the expectations are. Now, it seems to me, then mentioned the welfare, the food security bill, and the PDS, etc. I would think that one of the first things, by first meaning within the first 6 months, 9 months, possibly even the first budget, there will be or should be, if you will, a plan to, if you will, decrease these subsidies substantially, replace them with cash transfers or something equivalent, such that the poor are unambiguously better off with this new system, and yet you save about 2.5 to 3% of GDP. So therefore, zero political cost. Who loses from this? The middleman loses, the middlewoman loses, the politicians lose. And if you will, if anything we know about Modi is that, he doesn't care much whether the middleman loses. He wants, if you will, delivery of social services, whether it is electricity, whether it is water, or whether it is food. So therefore, I think it'll be relatively easy to bring about social welfare reform and, if you will, cut down the deficit by 1 to 2 percentage points. So that's, if you will, another huge plus. So all in all, remember, he's coming in, and if he comes in with a kind of majority that, if you will, opinion polls and the Satya Bazaar is talking about, let's say, for purposes of discussion, somewhere around 250 or 240 to 250 for the BJP alone, such that he doesn't need any of the women chief ministers to make him survive. There's a lot that can happen, and if you will, look. Simply put, there's so much, and partly for the reasons that Udayan said, there's so much low-hanging fruit in the economy. It's been destroyed. And once there is, it's like Russia, if you will, if you want to take an analogy, Eastern Europe, it was destroyed, and, very soon you saw 8%, 10%, 15% growth. Now, I'm not saying we'll see 8, 10, 15%, but for us, for crying out loud, to go from 6, 6.5 to 7.5, 8, wouldn't be that difficult at all. So therefore, I'll be very surprised. Now, one other statistic that, if you look at the with Xifen research, we've developed a monthly GDP model, and that itself is showing that we are at about 5.2, 5.3% GDP growth rate at present. So, I think just the business cycle, they won't have to do anything now. If the new government just brings in a sense of confidence and sentiment, and we all know how important that can be, this economy, large as it is, can literally turn on a dime. And by turning, I mean getting an extra 1% GDP growth. That, I think, if that doesn't happen, if you will, let me state it right now, from my view, and I'll be writing that then, this government has been a failure. If at the end of all this, when the economy has been hit into the ground, you can't get 6.5% growth in quick fashion, they'll be a failure.
So, if I got that right, you said that 1% is something that we can attribute or give way to just sentiment and confidence. Am I got that right, Dr. Bhalla?
1% is just business cycle.
Okay.
So 5.5 or 5.25 to 6.25, 6.5, pure business cycle. Okay. The external events, lowering of inflation, etc. Then the sentiment, etc., gets you another 0.5%, and so we are at 7% before you begin to say it.
Okay, so then you're saying that it'll go above that. Okay, some questions coming in. Shweta asks, technically, what can a new government accomplish in the first 100 days? Do you want to start off, Dr. Bhalla? Then I'll come to Mr. Bose.
Well, realistically, what it can accomplish in the first 100 days is a fair amount. That is to say, it can change the rules of the game, it can change the mindset, it can change the atmosphere of the Indian economy from a welfare state to a growth state. So any signals on that? So for example, there are several signals. One I mentioned on welfare reform. That doesn't mean that welfare reform has to be completed in the first 3 months, in the first 100 days, but there should be good indications. Then there is, there are various public sector units. Do we work under, as some of the newspapers have talked about, a Temasek type of holding group, such that there is much greater accountability and efficiency in the public sector? Right. On inflation, basically, if you will, my expectation is that, contrary to what has been in the press, they will not touch the RBI. That I think the relationship between the RBI and the government will be a hugely positive one, as it should be. It hasn't been. So that's another little delta, if you will, on the positive side. So I don't subscribe to the notion that basically the RBI and the Ministry of Finance or the government be antagonistic to each other. So you add these three up, I mean, I don't see the downside. Maybe I'm blind and maybe my DNA is a little bit too plus. But we are at a turning point, and the turning point is made possible because we've ground to a halt for 3 years, not just 1 year, not just 6 months.
That's true.
Right. Yeah, Mr. Bose, you were saying, what would you think should be the key steps or moves that a new government should be doing in the first 100 days in order to address all these overhangs that we've been talking about?
Yeah, well, where Surjit is spot on is that for 3 years this government hasn't functioned. So you have a situation where for 3 years nobody's done any work, and so therefore you just come in and clean the stable, as it were. Again, Surjit is absolutely right. I don't think he will touch the RBI. As to how he will encourage the RBI to reduce interest rates is something that we'll have to see, because I have been of the belief that the interest rates have been very high. Equally, I think in the first 100 days, he will declare war on inflation, particularly food inflation. Don't forget, he's a very clever man, very sharp man. He's a sharp, as in street thinking sharp. So he knows the expectations are many. So one of the clearest ways of meeting part of that expectation is food inflation, and therefore he will battle on food inflation and try and bring it down. I think that's what one he'll do. Second, he will encourage investment. Again, look at the Gujarat model. This entire vibrant Gujarat and this whole demonstration of people coming to invest. How much investment actually took place is another matter. It did, but how much exactly? Percentage, I don't know. But he will go for opening up the economy. Rules restated. The bureaucrats in the last 3 years have gotten into a huddle that they do nothing. They just pass the file like a table tennis ping pong, and now they will have to work. So therefore, he'll have to bring in bureaucracy, which says we will deliver. So therefore, I think the first 100 days will go in action plan 1, 2, 3. These are the steps forward. Who will do what? Inflation, war on inflation, getting investment in. I think people will keep taking snipes on, is he opening up retail, FDI. I think those are side noises, whether we do FDI retail or not. The economy has, the other thing I think he'll do is GST, and Surjit might have his view on that. I think he will go for GST, which will add another 1% or 1.5% to the GDP. So no, I'm optimistic on GDP, but inflation, food inflation, investment, creation of investment, creation of capital, generating confidence. I think the confidence was the reason why the stock market is doing so well. Is the confidence is coming back, and the confidence is completely gone. And you can't talk the market. Where I think my friend PC made a mistake was he kept on trying to talk the market up. You could do it in the 70s and 80s. In 2014, I have access to so much information. I can sit in my office room and work out how much he has postponed to next year, how much he has brought forward to this year. I don't need to be talked up or down. And, I'm not even a full-time banker anymore. So he was talking the market up and down. Now he has to, Modi has to get down to the bottom.
So I have a question for either Surjit or Udayan. From what I understand, almost as a default option, the new government, whichever comes in, benefits, because there are low-hanging fruits, as Surjit mentioned. There's the economic, cyclical effect, which will raise the growth by 1% or maybe 1.5%. So, is there in case if the Modi government comes into power, is there in the first 100 days a need, apart from the economic factors that may have to be influenced, a stronger political message that needs to be sent out as to what he means, the business he means, and therefore garner that kind of momentous and impetus which will see him through? Because the first 100 days is more about perception. And what is it that you want him to do in terms of the perception game politically?
Bhalla?
Yeah, good point. I mean, if I may take that first, one of the things I think he will do, there's been a lot of talk about secular, communal, who's secular, who's communal. I think we are sick of the word secular. And it's interesting that he's given this interview to Nai Dunya, to Shahid Siddiqui, where he stamps his feet and says he is secular and he'll remain secular as per constitution. And I think you have a lot of gutter snipe going after him, saying he's communal, and he winked his eye at that point and he did that to that person and therefore he's communal. All that will happen. The Kapil Sibbals of the world won't just simply drop away and die. And therefore that sniping will go on. And I think in the first 100 days he needs to create a perception that this is a stable secular government which follows the constitution. If I were one of his advisors, that's what I would advise him. Of course inflation, of course growth, of course the plan for, he'll have to do something very strong. I don't want to suggest going back to olden times, but people will have to think about depreciation allowance, etc. To shock start the system again. The system has come to a grinding halt.
Dr. Bhalla?
Yeah, look, I think a lot of this, what he does do in the first 100 days will, of course, be dependent on the kind of mandate he gets. So for purpose of discussion, let's assume, his 275 seats are there for the existing NDA. So that is a comfortable, and let's say it's a comfortable mandate. I think, he will, and again, Udayan has touched on some of the points. I mean, he will move from a position of strength. I mean, one of the things that the kind of sniping, etc., of an secular or whatever, all this stuff that we've been talking about, will very soon be forgotten. That doesn't mean that suddenly, we are an extremely, that all the, if you will, the bad things are gone. No, I think he'll make, we'll have to look at the appointments that he makes. Is there a Muslim appointed in his cabinet? Will be one of the things by which he can communicate as to his intentions and his directions. I think, various things in India, like, the Uniform Civil Code, there can be, and we just mentioned something on that, there are various ways by which you can assure both sides, that is Hindus, Muslims, Sikh sides, or four sides, if you will, that listen, the India of today is very different than what the Congress party has made it out to be. And the Congress, if you will, the greater the defeat of the Congress, the easier it will be for him to, if you will, have a, whether for lack of a better term, reconciliation package that, listen, we are going to make a new beginning. That's one of the things I'm looking forward to, that there's no, in my DNA plus, is, no vendettas, no going after this, going after that. What's happened has happened. Forget it. Let's start a new beginning. That is how he brings in the confidence of all the people of India. And he doesn't have to say he's secular or not. That itself will be an indication. And why would he do that? He's street smart, he's definitely street smart and smart per se. So I would think, basically, we can, look, I come back to the situation has been so bad on every front. It's very easy to make a difference.
Right.
And he would, I think, capitalize on the fact that things are so bad and that he's got a mandate. He'll move from a position of strength. I would also look for significant improvements of relationships with Pakistan. So, if you're looking for downside, we are there. I don't know how things can get worse on several fronts.
Right. So to answer the original question, Dr. Bhalla, you see, because we started by asking, are expectations running ahead of reality, right? So I think there was acknowledgement that expectations are high, but what you're saying is that really, even if half those expectations were met, that itself would be going a long way, and that's not too difficult, but we're already at the bottom.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Here's one more quick question from Shweta. She says, Arun Shourie has said that rolling back the rights economy model would be the most daunting task for a new government. if it was BJP, will they bite the subsidy bullet?
I think they will. Now the point is, remember, and I hope Arun Shourie is a major player in the new administration. This is all, pre-election, if you will, lowering expectations down, etc. In 1991, when we had the reforms, they didn't come in and say we'll bring out significant reforms. Nobody says that beforehand. Nobody should say that, because it's just enough, because there are enough interest groups on both sides, especially the people who lose out, that can damage your election. So I wouldn't go by, as I said, I have the greatest admiration for Arun Shourie, and I hope he's a big time player, probably will be. People are likely to change their optimism, become more optimistic about what can be done in India. Labor laws, Arun Shourie already said, and which I thought was very revealing, that there is, a sub-clause in the Constitution or something, that if the President gives his assent, the Parliament says yes, and the President gives his assent, you don't have to wait for the Rajya Sabha to, if you will, change the laws. So I think various things will be tried. I'd be very shocked. Let me put it this way. So my thing is that I will, my expectations are high enough that I'm ready to be shocked and negatively shocked, and then comment about it if they don't start, on a high note. Right. So my expectations is they will start on a high note and they will sustain a high note. Right. In the first.
So let me ask you the flip question, Dr. Bhalla. So since you said that the immediate task is not as difficult, and there are lots of low-hanging fruits, the same could apply if a UPA were to come back into power, isn't it? Assuming a UPA coming back into power, which is a little more chastened. Huh?
You missed everything. Absolutely not.
Okay.
From UPA, there are no expectations. Well, if the UPA were to come back, I would expect more of the same disaster. A welfare economy, an 18th century economy, 18th century mindset. What these guys will bring to the table is a change mindset, something quite out of the capacity of the Sonia Gandhi's government. It's not part of their DNA. Their DNA is, if you will, socialist economics, what we've seen. So how can you say that the expectation would be the same from them? Absolutely not. 180 degrees divergence.
Right. Oh, I agree completely. If by miracle UPA were to come back to power, I think what they would believe that it's because of the NREGA, it's because of food security, it's because of all the gives, and they will give more till there's nothing to give. It will become completely bankrupt as the country. I don't think the lady at the top has any idea of economics. She's governed by the NSC, and no, it would be disaster. It would be disaster.
Okay, Dr. Bhalla, one more question. How will or can the BJP balance its Hindutva brand of economics with liberalism?
Look, first of all,
from Shweta,
one of the things that I forecast will happen once the next week, I guess we're talking next week now, is that Hindutva will go out of our vocabulary. Yeah. So we will not be asking this question, how do you balance the Hindutva with A, B, and C? Hindutva hasn't been there in the, I don't even know what that term means. And so therefore, the issues that, look, red blood flows through the BJP and red blood flows to the Congress and flows to all the people. We respond to incentives. It's whether how you understand what incentives people respond to is what differentiates a failed government like the Congress versus hopefully a successful government like the BJP. Hindutva is a non-event, non-sequitur.
Okay. So let me sort of reel off some last comments before we close. Thinking Indian says the expectations are scary. Another comment, Mahavir Chand, he says expectations are more because of the last 10 years of UPA government's failure. People want reforms in every sector and that too quickly. maybe ahead of reality, says Nirmal, but he deserves it. It deserves to be expected, as he has done something, presumably referring to the Modi form of economic governance, and that of course goes back to Gujarat, which is of course a separate discussion. We've run out of time, gentlemen, completely. Thank you very much for joining us on the India Hangout. We'll of course be back very shortly.
Thank you.